What is up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, at 50 Shades of Drunk, back at you again. We are in I guess we're in the postseason for real football, but the Dynasty offseason has just begun. So today I have a special show for y'all. We're going to do some real talk. We're going to talk the truth about IDP Linebacker with my man, Jon Macri from PFF. We'll bring him in just a second. We're just going to talk about, the top 12 guys, how they perform, maybe who surprised us, who didn't, how we feel about their value going forward, and just what we can take away from this season. As always, be sure to like and subscribe where you're at. We appreciate that. Leave a 5-star review. That would also be awesome if you are on the iTunes world. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring in my man, Jon. Jon, what's up, brother?
How's it going, Jordan? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm excited to have you on and really pick your brain and learn some things here about some of these guys, these top 12 finishers at linebacker from 2020. It's crazy to think that the season's really over, especially with all the drama coming in. Like we're past it. Like we're looking to the next season.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts, right? Like you would have had to assume like at some point maybe we lose a game or lose a week of the season just from how things were shaping up. But yeah, I mean, you got to be kind of impressed with the NFL, whether it was stubbornness on their end or just doing a good job, a combination of both, whatever. But we got through it and got a full season out of it. And obviously fantasy players are happy and so is the NFL. So it's awesome.
Yeah, everybody's bread got buttered still. So all 16 games. So, well, guys, before we jump into the top 12 linebackers, we did have a question come in today on Twitter. I thought it would be fun to bounce it off of Jon here, kind of get his take on it. Question was from Cody Snow 25 on Twitter, and he basically just asked, at what point in a dynasty startup draft do you start looking to draft IDP players? I'll defer to you, Jon, first, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts on it.
Sure. Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think it's one that I get pretty commonly, for people that are just starting into IDP. A lot of people like to do the dynasty startup kind of thing. And I tell them, for the most part, what you want to do, you want to build your offense first, right? So you want to try and collect your stars on offense as you normally would. And you're probably looking to build almost a starting lineup on offense, right? You want at least a good running back or two. You want a handful of wide receivers, 3 or 4. A good tight end, maybe a quarterback, right? Quarterback's a deeper position, so you can maybe wait on that one. So I usually, depending on the size of the league, I guess, but I like to wait till like round 7-ish, maybe around there, 7 or 8. Sometimes I go a little later, just depending on what the value is on those offensive guys. I find it's harder to come by the talent on offense than it is for some of the linebackers and stuff like that start coming off the board early. Like you'll see some guys reach a lot of the times in maybe the 3rd or 5th round or something for a Darius Leonard or something like that. And it's, there's still a lot of offensive stars on the board. Those are your money makers, right? It's where you can probably pull a good linebacker still later on.
Yeah. I agree that 7 is kind of the sweet spot. I think that's where you can start to look if if the draft has gone favorably for you so far, and you feel like you said, you have 2 running backs you like, you have 2 or 3 wide receivers, you have a flex guy that you're like, if I had to start him every week, I'm fine with that. Then I would start looking at my at my defensive players anywhere from around 7 to 10. I'm probably going to take my first guy, and I like going linebacker there. I know a lot of the conventional wisdom or the anecdotal advice is go, get a high level defensive lineman, but they just don't score as many points. And you know what I mean? Just overall. And the volatility of the position is very tight endish, where it's like, a guy can be great 1 year and then he can just fall off 2 or 3 years and he'll be great again a few years later. And it's with linebackers, when you get a Blake Martinez or a Joe Schobert on your team, you know what you have on your team. And I would rather do that with one of my early defensive picks than play this kind of Russian roulette game with defensive line players. That's kind of my take on it. What do you like to take defensive line first? Do you like taking high level linebackers first, or?
Yeah, it depends, right? Like it depends on how the kind of flow of the draft ends up going, but usually it's got to be like an elite like defensive linemen. Like there's maybe like 2 or 3, right? Like, you know, this year coming into drafts, it was, you know, it was like Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Danielle Hunter, right? Only one of those guys, I mean, even arguably didn't even work out, Joey Bosa. So, yeah, but I mean, linebacker's the safer pick, right? Like, you know, like you said, you know what you're getting. The floor for the defensive line guys is so much lower too, because if they're not getting sacks, they're not really getting you much, right? So, yeah, I don't mind that tactic. Is going linebacker first.
And it's so much easier to pull a defensive lineman, you know, kind of out of your lineup. We're kind of going down a wormhole here, but, you know, out of your lineup if he hasn't hit a sack 2 or 3 weeks, and have him on your bench when he does go off.
Right.
Whereas we were still playing Corey Littleton and Joe Schobert early in the season when they were and Joe Schobert came through in the end, you know, but there was a time very early on when it was a little bit hairy, but you didn't take him out of your lineup.
Yeah.
You did, you know, start pulling guys out of your line. Like Frank Clark, by the end of the season, I was like, and, you know, he was top 15 defensive line pick. He was basically droppable. I mean, he was garbage. Like, that happened to Corey Littleton, but that's a pretty rare occurrence at the linebacker position, barring an injury.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you wrote an awesome piece about Corey Littleton on PFF, and you put up a dope thread early in the season. So, where can people find that? Do you have it pinned anywhere, or retweet it later for us, maybe? Or
yeah, I could throw that out. Actually, in my Twitter profile at PFF_Macri, the bio link is a link to my author's page on PFF. So all my written stuff is up there. So those Littleton articles there, and yeah, it kind of hit on it a little earlier, right? We just noticed that he was in kind of the wrong scheme. He wasn't being used the same way he was in LA. He wasn't really benefiting from having like an Aaron Donald on the defensive line to open things up for him. And yeah, I said like he could possibly turn it around just because the opportunity was there, but he didn't really get that opportunity afterwards. He was playing so poorly that Nicholas Morrow ended up taking over his job once he got hurt. So,
dude, Nicholas Morrow was fired down the season. I was not on him the way I should have been. He's dual tagged on a sleeper too with a DB tag. So, woo, fire.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope that helped answer your question, my man Cody. And I guess we'll go ahead and jump into the linebackers. You know, we're going to talk about the top 12 guys that finished the season, IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. If you don't remember what IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring is, y'all go check out my pinned tweet. It also talks about impact plays, which I recently had that article go up on Dynasty Nerds. That will also be in the link to this on the YouTubes. And yeah, we're just going to talk about the truth about linebackers in 2020. You know, we're going to hit you all with the facts, you know, separate facts from fiction, and we're going to see, you know, what's up. And I got a little drop here from my man Gucci Mane.
Just the truth.
All right, so that's my first drop on a show. I had to pay homage to the trap god, Gucci. You already know. All right, so let's dive into this, my man John. The top 12 linebackers for y'all in 2020. Kingpin of the house was Devin White, 355 points. Roquan Smith, 339. Zach Cunningham, 315. Blake Martinez, 309. TJ Watt, 307. Joe Schobert, 304. Jaylon Smith with 299. Bobby Wagner with 289. Darius Leonard with 288. Deion Jones, 284. Eric Wilson, 280. And then Foyesade Oloukun, I hope I'm saying his name right, with 274 points. Boom. John, who on that list is the most surprising? There's a couple of guys on here that are kind of, you know, surprising, but who surprised you the most on this list?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think the obvious surprises are probably Wilson and Oloukun, right? But in a way to kind of go away from the obvious here, I'm going to say Devin White at number 1. Just to be number 1, right? Like, not that he's not in the top 12 conversation, but landing number 1 overall is pretty impressive. Playing next to somebody like Levante David, who's also a tackle machine. I mean, he was just crazy efficient this year. He made the most of all of his opportunities. He landed sacks. He got the tackles. He made those big impact plays, 30 impact plays, like you say. So, it's kind of crazy. Devin White just jumping to the top of the charts here.
Yeah, I mean, 15 games played, that's one. So he played one less game than some guys. It's only his second season.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I mean, some people claim they saw it coming, and maybe they did. You know, coming into the season, I've said on this show before, one of my knocks on Devin White was last year. He did have a lot of big plays, impact plays. Like he had like 120 something return yards and 2 scores last year. Like he was like forcing fumbles. And I was just like, look, like, is he really this electric, or is he like this just happening rookie, you know, kind of a beginner's luck kind of situation? So I
Mhm.
kind of knocked him coming into the season because I was like, look, if there's no way he's this good. And he just basically threw up the bird to me and was like, dude, and you know what's crazy? He has me blocked on Twitter. This is real shit.
Oh,
He's like the only, there's a few people on Twitter have me blocked, but Devin White is like a player that I kind of love. And I guess when I tweeted out some stuff about, you know, maybe he's a linebacker too, I guess he saw that because players see that stuff, and he has me straight up blocked on Twitter.
oh man, that's crazy. I mean,
Brutal,
these guys, they do
brutal.
search their own name, right?
Oh yeah.
I know it happens. So yeah,
Yeah.
you obviously pissed him off.
I know, dude. I mean, and like you said, but it's a surprise. I mean, he was the number one, and he didn't get first team All Pro nod this year, did he?
No.
Ah,
No.
that's so rude. So what does PFF say about him? I don't know. I mean, what can you disclose on the show? Obviously, I know you get, you know,
Yeah.
behind the curtain. So because I know there's some people are like, is he good, or is it just that he just does numbers? Like, what's the situation here? What's the truth?
So yeah, so he's good at some things, right? He's a really good pass rusher as an off-ball linebacker. That much we know with his sack totals this year. But where he struggles is his coverage, right? He gets absolutely demolished in coverage. When he's tasked with either covering a running back or a tight end, something like that, their teams are targeting him, and they're aware of his weakness in that area of his game. So he gets targeted a lot, which, I mean, that can lead to a lot of tackles as well, right? You know, it depends on the player, but yeah, he's given up a lot of yards. He gives up touchdowns, things like that. He leaves his gaps too, so he takes chances, which can pay off, and it can't. It just depends. But leaving your gap will hurt your run defense score and things like that. So he's not one of the higher graded linebackers at PFF because of those things. But his pass rush grade is actually pretty solid. I think it was a 76.7 or 9, just off the top of my head.
Sorry to cut you off, but are those weighted in any way? So is like a high pass rush grade mean less overall than a high coverage grade? Or do they all scale, you know, the same, you know, per?
Yeah, they tend, like, generally they tend to grade the same, but like each specific play within those types of defensive assignments can grade differently, right? So you know, him getting a sack isn't necessarily like an automatic +1 or something like that on the play, because it can be a cleanup sack. You know, it could be just the quarterback running out of bounds for no gain, and he doesn't even put hands on him, but he's there in front of him, right? So those don't grade as highly as like if he's beating his blocker clean, getting to the quarterback in like 2.5 seconds and taking him down for a sack or a strip sack or something like that.
Nice. Awesome. Well, what do you think about him going forward next year? You think he, you know, I mean, obviously number one in his second season. Is he, you know, Darius Leonard's obviously the default linebacker one in the dynasty conversation, but how do you feel about Devin White? I mean, just
Yeah,
like, what do you think?
I think there's a good chance I'm not going to get any Devin White in any of my drafts, just because people are going to want him now, right? He's going to be so heavily sought after.
You know, you say that, and I've seen 2 drafts. I was in a draft, and I've seen a draft where he's not even in the top 3 linebackers taken.
Really?
Still, if you can believe that, this is real life. Like, and I was shocked too that I got him in the one I got him, and then I saw a draft someone sent me, and he was barely. I don't even know if he was a first round pick, and it was an all IDP league, man. It was crazy.
Wow. So
I know. I think people went heavy on DLs though, which I think is kind of a strategy that we need to start. I don't know. I'm gonna tell my people and maybe start fading that, because Devin White in the second round, that's unreal.
Yeah, especially after seeing what he can do. Like, I mean, when you're rushing the passer, like, it just raises your floor so much more, especially at the level that he did it. What was it? 109 pass rush attempts this year, which is crazy for an
And he
off-ball
got home,
Yeah.
on 1 in 10, basically, I
Yeah.
mean, just rounding a little bit here, but
Yeah.
that's wild. So,
Yeah.
Devin White, y'all, I got him. I don't have him anywhere because apparently I hate him and he knows that, so he blocked me. But I actually did that draft I'm talking about. I was the one who drafted him in a draft. He was like the 6th or 7th linebacker come off the board.
Nice.
So I was happy to get him where I did. I don't have him anywhere because, like you said, he was expensive last year, and it doesn't look like his price has really moved yet. So we'll see how that rolls out. Number 2 on the list, y'all, we had Roquan Smith, 3rd-year linebacker out of Georgia. 33 impact plays. That is a highlight right there because only one other player in the linebacker group had that many. That's even more than Devin White had. 98 solo tackles. I mean, that's a bomb number. I mean, I think that was, what was I good for? 2nd in the league, I believe. Yes. And 139 combined tackles, 6th in the league. And he had 18 tackles for loss, which was 2nd in the league behind only TJ Watt. What are your thoughts on Roquan Smith's monster year, which is, kind of overshadowed by what Devin White did, but in its own right was, pretty special?
For sure. And Roquan Smith has looked good. Like in the same vein that Devin White has kind of struggled in coverage, Roquan Smith has actually looked like a good coverage linebacker, which is just surprising because he wasn't really that coming out or in his first year or first 2 years, I guess it's been now, right? But he's one of those guys that's just always on the field and he's always making plays. He's everywhere. He had those 2 sacks in week 14, which was huge, right? Especially for people in the fantasy playoffs. And then he had a monster game in week 16. So he really, I can't remember where he was in the standings before the fantasy playoffs took off, but he jumped to the top for sure with those games. And I mean, I guess this is not that it's surprising, but like considering his year last year where it was kind of up and down, I know he missed a game or 2, but he had really quiet games and then he had these big games. He was almost boom or bust a little bit, but really brought it all together this year for sure.
Yeah, he really, like you said, down the stretch when it really mattered, he was, getting home for your team in a big way. He had a 2 interception game as well, I believe. Maybe that was that week 16 game.
Yeah, I think week 16.
Which was, it was week 16 against Jacksonville. He had 2 interceptions. And like I said, week 14, he had 2 sacks. Week 14, 39 points. In Jacksonville week fantasy championship week, 34.6. So monster games from Roquan Smith here. What do you think about the trade value of Roquan Smith?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends what people are offering. Like I know you mentioned the trade Roquan and a 2nd for a 1st and a 3rd, right, this year?
I believe that is it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I tend to lean to the side. It's really close. I tend to lean to the side with the 1st. And again, it just kind of comes back to that offensive point, right? Because with the players that are coming in the 2021 draft, there's some really good offensive players. Again, there's question marks. We don't know exactly what they'll be at the NFL level, but at the same time, looking at Roquan, like this was his best year, right? Out of 3, we saw what he kind of was last year. So it's really, there's this concern that it could be an outlier season, but he looked really good. So, I mean, he could be up in this conversation again next season, but I guess I'd still probably go the 1st. You could still probably get a linebacker that's close, not going to put up the same numbers, but you could probably get somebody close in that range of Roquan.
Yeah, that trade he's referring to is one I did in the big league. Shout out big league if anybody's listening over there. Roquan Smith and a 2022 2nd I received for a 2021 1st and a 2021 3rd. In that league, we play more defensive players than offensive players. So, and my linebacker ones like Christian Kirksey and Rashaan Evans. So I was like, look, it was a weakness on my team this year. And because we're so weighted heavily towards defense, and because I do kind of preach to people that Roquan is a player that I think is value similarly to a first round pick, I say that. So I was like, do I really believe this or not? And I was looking at my team and I said, this is a move that I think I should make. So I did that trade. Let's talk, and that's just picks for players. Let's talk about player for players. Let's talk Roquan for a running back. I'm going to throw some running backs at you, and then Roquan Smith, is the other one. Let's assume IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, and let's assume a super flex, two flex, and then 11 IDP starters.
Okay.
So Roquan Smith or Melvin Gordon, Dynasty.
Roquan Smith.
Okay.
I'm not a big Melvin Gordon guy. I'm not a believer.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. Roquan Smith or Ronald Jones?
I'd probably still go Roquan. I mean, Tampa Bay, I don't know. They don't seem crazy about Ronald Jones. Like, they're using him a little bit more, but they brought in Lenny, and it's like, if they don't see that Leonard Fournette is crap, but they keep throwing him out onto the field, it's not a good sign.
Yeah, he's a big boy these days too. I don't think he's been packing on the pounds. All right, Roquan Smith, or here's kind of a crazy one, Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
Because I don't know. I think there might be a little something to this Jeff Wilson thing.
You think so?
I don't know. He had like 10 touchdowns this year, like low key. And Shanahan's just like, I think he's like tired of playing with his running backs because he had Jerick McKinnon situation. He's had the Raheem Mostert situation. He just like, look, I don't care who it is anymore. Like, it's just that guy. Just go. And right now, that guy's Jeff Wilson, basically.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, the Shanahan offense, like, it feeds running backs, right? So if Jeff Wilson ends up being a bell cow running back in that offense, then he's kind of a star.
Right? Yeah. What do you think? But I'm probably Roquan on that one. I'll throw you two more that I think are a little bit more enticing. Okay, Roquan or Antonio Gibson?
I'd go Gibson.
Roquan and Kareem Hunt.
Ooh, that's tough. That's a tough one. Man,
I know I'm just putting you on the spot here. I'm sorry, but I mean, this is the content people want, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
And I know these are the existential questions we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, Kareem Hunt, I think, is a free agent at the end of this year.
I know. I think he signed like a 2-year deal with them. I think he's like in a situation where he should be cozied up to the Browns for at least another year.
Right. So, okay. And I mean, I do like the way they use him. Like, Chubb is there. I don't know. I might be biased because I'm a Browns fan, so I'm going to say Kareem Hunt.
All right, that's fine. And let's go with his stablemate, David Montgomery. Roquan or Montgomery?
Yeah. Yeah, Montgomery was huge this year.
Towards the end, he did ball.
Yeah, I'd probably stick. God.
It's Dynasty, I know. And when I think about Dynasty and I look at like Bobby Wagner, who's like 30, and he's still like a top 10 guy, and I'm like, Roquan could just rattle off like 7 top 10 finishes. Yeah. And I'm like, I would be lucky to get 3 top 10 finishes out of David Montgomery if I'm being completely honest with myself.
It's true. And then the shelf life for running backs is not as long. Yeah, you convinced me. I'll go Roquan.
All right, there it is. We got some IDP love on the show, y'all.
Yeah.
We're about that life. All right, let's go ahead and move on past Roquan. Number 3 on the list was Zach Cunningham. Had 315 points, IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. Played 16 games. Led the NFL in tackles with 164 combined. Average, that's essentially 10 tackles a game. Second most tackles in the league last year as well, 2019. So he is a known tackle monster. I know there was some FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the middle of the season whenever his snaps were, they weren't intact. And, there's nothing that shakes the faith of an IDP player like, 1 week of snaps going down. That really fires up the articles. So Zach Cunningham, though, is like, what, screw it. I don't need more than 70% of snaps to get my 10 tackles. And he just did it over and over again. Down the stretch, he did play all the games. What are your thoughts on Zach Cunningham going forward? I mean, to me, he looks like he's not a fun linebacker to own because he makes his hay tackling. He is a tackle-based linebacker. Actually, I'm going to try. He's a tackle-based linebacker. He only had 13 impact plays, 3 of those being sacks. So, I mean, those were high leverage ones as well. So that helped boost his score. But honestly, without those, I mean, he's basically impact play less. So what are your thoughts on Zach Cunningham, though? I know he got his big contract last summer as one of the last players in that regime of people to get that. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love Zach Cunningham. So I wrote up an article at the beginning of the season, kind of like a My Guys article, and Zach Cunningham was my top linebacker for My Guys, just because I feel like he was really undervalued coming into drafts. Like, outside of people that already owned Zach Cunningham on their fantasy teams, like I feel like a lot of people didn't really pay the respect to the man that he deserved, because he, like you said, he is a tackle machine. He's also a missed tackle machine. He led the league. He led the league in missed tackles with 22. So I mean, he could have had even more points if he makes half of those, right?
That's
Like,
crazy to think about. Led the
yeah,
league in tackles and missed 22.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild.
So he's just always, I mean, but it's a sign that he's always around the ball too, right?
Yeah.
Like he follows the ball, he gets there, and he makes plays. So I really like Zach Cunningham. I mean, Houston gave him that big contract. I'm not worried about him going forward.
Yeah.
I think he'll be the top choice.
Yeah, the tackle floor is basically like one of the most intact things there is. If he just, like I said, if the fear of the snaps wasn't there this year, there would have been really nothing to say except for, play him every week. Briefly, just so people can get the idea of a difference of what like a tackle-based linebacker versus like an impact play linebacker looks like. This is Zach Cunningham's profile, 67% solos, and then he has 18% assists. So, I mean, that's good for almost 78, 90% of his points are coming from tackles, essentially. So then you go over, look at a guy like Roquan, much smaller portion of his scoring is coming from tackles. Still a lot, 57. Then you put tackles, that's 60. But, he's getting sack points. He's getting big tackle for loss points, with his tackle for loss number second in the league, a couple of interceptions. So that's, and then again, we'll just go back to Zach Cunningham. Look how much more like bland and kind of just boring this is. So that kind of gives you an idea of like where he's scoring, how he's scoring. Just thought I would share that with the people. But, Zach Cunningham's the perfect example of this, kind of bread and butter linebacker where, I mean, he had 10% of his points came from something outside of a tackle. So, but like you said, he's always there for the tackle. So maybe he turns into, if he turns into a playmaker on top of this, he gets those impact plays up to, that 20 range, he could blow into that top 3. I mean, he was a top 3 guy. He could blow up even higher. So,
yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's move on to Blake Martinez. I'm going to pull this guy up on the screen here too. Blake Martinez this year, 16 games played. He's an Iron Man, basically plays 16 games every single year, 309 points in IDP 1-3 scoring, 4th straight season with 140 combined plus tackles, 151 this year, if you can believe that. 21 impact plays. That's a good number. And the crazy thing is he played through a little bit of injury here towards the end of the season, with a back injury and the ankle injury, but he still, suited up, went out there and got it done. So what are your thoughts on Blake Martinez? I know coming into the season, the fear again was he's moving teams. We should be afraid. We don't know what's going to happen to him. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, he was a value. I got him as a linebacker, like 13 off the board last year in Dynasty Startup, if you can believe it. That's how, we're quick to forget, the narratives that were, floating around like wildfire. But he turns in his best season of his career, basically. What are your thoughts on Blake Martinez and going forward in New York?
Yeah, I mean, and that's crazy. LB13. I mean, for Blake Martinez, I guess it's just because he changed teams. Like if he was still in Green Bay, I doubt that he's going that late. But
yeah,
that's nuts. But I mean, he's just reliable, right? Like that's you could say, like you said, you just kind of put him into your lineup and you don't ever have to worry about him. Like he's out there every single play, every week. And he's in a good system for that too, I think. So Green Bay ran a similar system in that they ran basically one linebacker, and it was rare that they'd have a second linebacker on the field. The Giants do the exact same thing. They run more DBs than linebackers, so he's going to be the one linebacker that's out there. And yeah, I mean, he's going to rack up tackles because of it. I didn't realize that he was hurt as well, playing through injury.
Not like super bad, but banged up towards the end of games, getting pulled off, kind of just reaching down, grabbing his ankle and stuff. Had a designation. He played, like I said, but people, that Giants defense was better than people realized coming in. And, Peppers was hurt a little early in the season too. So, Gettleman's a great meme, but, he seems to be he needs to be putting some playmakers up there, Big Blue.
He got a steal in Leonard Williams too on the defensive line. I mean,
dude, yeah. I don't even know what to think about that guy. I mean, I had completely written him off, essentially, and blows up this year. Was a top guy down the stretch. I mean, through the whole season, basically.
Yeah.
He had like a 3-sack game, like in the very last week, like one of the last 2 weeks of the season too. Just
having just like these monster games, and you're like, okay, this is why the guy was the first round pick. And I mean, it didn't look like it with the Jets, but I mean, I guess it's the Jets, right? So
yeah, that's exactly right. Well, final thoughts on Martinez. I mean, it's kind of, you're used to seeing him. He's been a top 10 linebacker each of the last 4 seasons, top 5 in 2020, 2018, and 2017. So, like I said, he's kind of undervalued. I mean, depending on your drafts, obviously. I think the narrative of him being a quote unquote bad linebacker, by the angry Green Bay Packers fans last year and the year before that, may have bled into some of the IDP conversation. But you can't lie with those numbers. 140 plus tackles 4 years in a row. That's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, for sure.
Bobby Wagner-esque right there. So
definitely
lock him in. All right, linebacker number 5. Moving right along, we have TJ Watt. Played 15 games, 4th NFL season, 33 impact plays, tied Roquan Smith there. 15 sacks, led the NFL. 33 tackles for a loss, led the NFL. He also had 41 quarterback hits, which led the NFL. Another great season from TJ Watt. He's a linebacker 1 in my scoring. He's a linebacker 1 in Fantasy Pros scoring. I know it's unconventional and it's hard for people sometimes to break out of the norm or just like call spade a spade. But I mean, TJ Watt, when you ask people what, I actually ran a poll on Twitter this week. I said, who's a more valuable IDP asset, TJ Watt or Jamal Adams? The overwhelming vote was like 60-something% Jamal Adams, or not Jamal Adams, TJ Watt. So I was looking at, our rankings on Dynasty Nerds, and right now our consensus has Jamal Adams above TJ Watt. So I don't know what we're going to do to get him bumped up over him, but I think, I've seen him go number 1 overall in several IDP only Dynasty drafts.
Wow.
I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, and he's such an advantage if he's DL eligible, but even to be a big play linebacker, outside linebacker, and be as consistent as he is, he's also very valuable in your linebacker spot too. So, 3rd season with 7 or more passes defended, that's big right there. He's basically averaging, 3 or almost 3 solo tackles a game since 2018. That's a pretty solid floor, and you basically get a sack a game too with him. So what are your thoughts on TJ Watt? I know they're not going to give him the defensive player of the year because we got to just give it to Aaron Donald. So I'll just get past that. But I want everyone to know if I had a vote, it would 100% be going to TJ Watt. But talk to me about TJ Watt, the linebacker.
Yeah. So, well, first, I think they are going to give him the defensive player of the year.
You think they'll give it to Watt?
I think they will.
Ooh.
I would give it to Donald. So we're on the opposite end.
That's
here.
fine. That's fine. A lot of people would, and I'm okay with that. But I think that you think you're wrong if you do that. So,
but yeah, I think he will. I think when they give out these awards, they like to look at box score and stuff like that. And I mean, the sack numbers and the tackles for a loss, that's what they're gonna eye on. So, but I mean, I won't get into it. But I think it should be.
They robbed him last year. Gave it to Stephon Gilmore.
I know.
They robbed him. He was robbed, John. Yeah. I saw a man get robbed on television. Yeah. It was so sad. Poor guy.
So but yeah, from an IDP standpoint, I mean, those sacks, those pass breakups, tackles for a loss, like those are huge. Those are huge plays to get out of any linebacker. And if you're getting out of a guy like TJ Watt, who's an edge rusher, and he's going to be going after the quarterback every play with a high sack floor. Like, I mean, that's solid. He should be, he's going to be probably going to be top 10 again next year, right? Like, it's just, he's that good.
I don't think we've seen his ceiling yet. I mean, this is his most sacks in a year, and he just hit 15. This was a down year for sacks across the whole league. And so for him, 15 wouldn't have got it done last year. That would have been good for like 3rd or 4th. 41 quarterback hits. IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. We give them 1 point. That's a way to kind of give credit for pressures. It didn't go all the way for a sack, but it's a way of scoring. Getting to the quarterback in a fashion. 41 points there. That's big. I mean, it's only 1 point per piece but to get that close to the quarterback and get on him that much, that's a huge chunk of his pie. There's no other player with look at Zach Cunningham. I mean, this guy barely got close to the quarterback ever, different type of player, obviously, but even Roquan Smith, who did get to get two sacks, he only had 6 quarterback hits. So love to see those points from Watt. Obviously quarterback hits, I think, should be scored. If you can do pressures and you want to do pressures, you can do that. But I feel like the quarterback hit is a little bit more indicative of affecting the quarterback, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe I would defer to you in your area of expertise.
Yeah, I think if your league allows for it, you definitely want quarterback hits to count, right? But I know there's some platforms that just don't allow it. They just don't track it, right? Which is kind of sucks, but I mean, it is what it is. But
it is what it is. My son's kindergarten teacher says you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So I say I'm fine with that. I can work. Those are words to live by right there.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah. So you want to, the quarterback hits, the pass breakups. I mean, just everything. Like they're living up to his big brother JJ Swat at the defensive line doing the same thing, and he's in a good scheme to do it too. Pittsburgh, after passer. I mean, they do it without.
He's one of their keystone pieces. They're talking about blowing things up and doing things different. I know through all of this, TJ Watt is going to be probably a Steeler for life. As long as Mike Tomlin's there, TJ Watt will be there. And that makes me very excited because this isn't the Houston Texans. Like, we're going to go win a Super Bowl with TJ Watt, and I'm going to be here for it. So
what do you think? What do you think about bringing in JJ Watt to play opposite?
I would love that. I mean, he'd fit in great with the Steelers, who have a bunch of old dudes. Like, he'd fit right in the 33 plus crowd, I mean, like, there's a big group of those guys in the Steelers locker room.
Yeah.
Get him in there.
They'd have Derek playing fullback too, right?
Yeah. Let's do it. I'm about it. Go Steelers. Let's get JJ a ring too. But all right, well, that's our top 5. Before we continue on, guys, make sure you thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, and more great IDP content, Dynasty content on here. You can support the IDP Army via Patreon. Go to check it out on patreon.com/the IDP Army. And me and Steve would appreciate that. The channel would appreciate that. Continue to, improve things. Go check out the IDP Army Instagram too, at IDP Army, and the IDP Army Twitter, at IDP Army on Twitter. We got some fire coming out over there as well. So let's get to man number 6 on the list. If y'all forgot where we're at, that's Joe Schobert. We're going to keep plugging along. 304 points, 16 games played this year. 4th most combined tackles on the season, 141, 19 impact plays. 4th straight season as a multi-sack player, 2.5 this year. Back-to-back seasons with multiple interceptions, 4 in 2019, 3 in 2020. And his 3rd season inside the top 10 at linebacker in the last 4 years, a linebacker 3 in 2019, a linebacker 7 in 2017. And honestly, in 2018, he was pacing that way, but he just missed some games. So he was, on a points per game basis, he was still one of the top linebackers. So Joe Schobert, never leaves the field. I think he played like 9. I think he missed like 1 or 2 snaps this season. Honestly, he's underrated and kind of underappreciated in my opinion. I was really happy to see him go get paid in Jacksonville. And honestly, give them getting Trevor Lawrence makes me all the more excited for him, the player, because I'm a Joe Schobert fan. That team is garbage. I felt bad for him this year. He still played his heart out, and now he gets Trevor Lawrence. And I think things are going to, I think things could catch on in Jacksonville a little bit faster than maybe we think they could. So, yeah. We'll see. What are your thoughts on Joe Schobert and the season he had, and where you got him ranked and projecting going forward and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so he's so similar to like Blake Martinez, right? In like many different ways. In that they both changed teams this year. They both very similar in that they don't come off the field. They're reliable when they're out there. I know he was kind of hurt a little bit during his time in Cleveland. Maybe. He might not have missed that much.
He did miss. He missed a couple of games in 2018. I believe.
That's right. Yeah. So but I mean, when he was a Brown, he was doing the same thing, right? So he was out there, he was making those tackles. He's not maybe necessarily like a big impact play kind of guy, but he
gets enough, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
19 isn't bad. That's a pretty colorful chart. I mean, a big chunk of it obviously is your tackles and assists. But I mean, he's got, a little bit of everything: quarterback hits, tackles for loss. He's got a couple interceptions, the pass deflections, the sacks. I mean, he gets a little bit of everything. So,
yeah.
on top of the fact that fourth most combined tackles in the league, 141. And like I said, he plays every game, and every snap of every game. So,
Yeah, and I think like even the way like Miles Jack started the year, I think people were kind of getting excited about him, right? But I mean that kind of evened itself out because Schobert just never left the field and he just did his thing. And yeah, that 141 tackles, like that just seems like he can do that every year. Like it's crazy. And um,
yeah,
yeah, so you say
get you.
fourth straight sack season. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
he's too if you let him.
he's not a monster impact player. He doesn't get like 25, but he's good for, 15, 17, 18, 19 pretty much every year. And I think he could do more. And again, he does have 140, tackle upside. So, and I mean, yeah, a couple of forced fumbles every single year. I mean, yeah, Joe Schobert's he's kind of underrated, kind of undervalued in my opinion. He's always a guy that's, when it comes time to take a linebacker in your draft, you can probably get Joe Schobert. He's probably the guy you can pull in round 8 or 9 if you don't go in round 6 or 7. And you're going to get a guy who, like I said, every season he's been healthy, he's been essentially 16 game starter, a top 10 linebacker. So love me some Joe Show. We call him All Pro Joe around here, even though he's never been All Pro. That's because he's also been robbed of All Pro nods. But yeah, we like to get a little wild around here. All right, let's see what we got next. On the list after Joe Schobert was Jaylon Smith coming in with at number 7, 299 points, 16 games played, career highs in combined tackles, 154 this year. That's second in the league. And then career high 89 solo, 7th most in the league. Kind of a low impact play number, only 15. 4 straight seasons, though, he's played all 16 games. 3rd straight season with 120 plus tackles. 3rd straight season as a linebacker 1, linebacker 10 in 2019, linebacker 11 in 2018. Currently on Dynasty Nerds, he's our consensus linebacker 4. And yeah, he's, like I said, the impact plays he turned in this year are a little bit lower than you usually want for your linebacker 1. But he has had seasons up in that, 19, 22, I believe, the last 2 years. So he can get up into that 20 range, but he's never going to, I don't think, push into that 25, 30. But I do, my question to you, maybe just to bring you into this, is we just got Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And we just saw Deion Jones, who we're going to get to shortly here on this list. He had a 25 impact play season. He was used in a way where he was able to get high leverage snaps, rushing the passer behind the line of scrimmage, and he got home. But we know Jaylon Smith can do that. He really wasn't asked to do that a lot this year. So what do you think about the season Jaylon Smith just had, and how do you think it's going to compare to the season Jaylon Smith is going to have coming up with Dan Quinn coming in?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think part of it, like kind of what it has to do with, is the linebackers opposite him, Sean Lee and Leighton Vander Esch, not really guys you can rely on to stay healthy, right? So it puts more on the plate for Jaylon Smith to do kind of in coverage kind of thing. So he doesn't maybe have that freedom to work as a blitzer and maybe make some of those impact plays, sacks and tackles for a loss as well. But yeah, I mean, I love Jaylon Smith. He's probably one of my favorite linebackers in the league. I just love his story, like coming out of Notre Dame when he tore his ACL and LCL and had the nerve damage, everything like that before he got drafted. For him to come and play and not miss a game in like whatever it's 3 years.
He's played 16 games all 4 years of his career. He only started 6 his rookie season, but he played in all 16.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. So he's one of my favorites. I think he can get back up. He could probably bring those impact plays up a bit. Like you said, Dan Quinn, I mean, he put Deion Jones as a pass rusher way more than he was used to this season, which, I mean, Dan Quinn's been there for a while and didn't really do that, but he felt the freedom to do it. So maybe he does it with Jaylon Smith. I think he's probably the better pass rusher between him and Vander Esch.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think so.
So, I mean, if they're going to have anybody do it, it's going to be him, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see him being used a little bit more aggressively this year. So, I know. I mean, didn't he grade out pretty poorly on PFF, or isn't he like not good? Who's the Cowboys fan? Marcus something, right?
Oh, right. Mosher.
Yep, and he during the Thanksgiving game, when Jaylon was not doing too hot necessarily, or did he get an interception that game? I don't know. He was missing a few tackles. He got benched for a series or whatever. I mean, people were flaming that. I mean, they were quick to flame old Jaylon Smith. And then he got, and then the next week he didn't help himself really getting in somebody's face and kind of acting all goofy or whatever. But what's the story with him? I mean, are people are gonna try to fade him because he's not good anymore, or like what's your take on Jaylon Smith? The new system, new coach, going to be better? Can we just kind of ignore this whole like he sucks, boo on him situation? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I mean, it was his worst season in the NFL as far as like our PFF grades go, and it was pretty bad. I think it was he was grading in the 50s or something like that when he was looking in the 70s, 80s before, right?
Not great.
So it's not good. But I mean, the entire Dallas defense wasn't great this year. It's hard to
no joke
grade well in a bad system, right? So
yeah.
I mean, if anybody's fading Jaylon Smith because of his poor play, like I think it's the wrong move. I mean, the guy is still it's opportunity is what's the key, right? For IDP scoring, and he's out there. He's reliable. He's healthy. He makes plays. He's easily a guy you'd never really have to consider benching. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing. That was a question people were asking though after like the poor play. Like I got that question and I'm like, look, you drafted Jaylon Smith as a top guy. I know this is IDP and there are people out there telling you can stream everything. Don't do that. Not with a guy you drafted that high. Not with a guy who, like I said, has had 130 or 120 tackles, every season the last 3 seasons. I mean, don't do that. I mean, at worst, he's a linebacker too. Like, why would you bench him? Like, I don't know.
And part of the reason you draft him so high is for that peace of mind too, right?
Exactly. You don't put peace of mind on your bench.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you got to go forward with him. Dallas is obviously they're not going to go anywhere with him. I'm pretty sure they
just locked him into a big contract.
Right?
It's like a 5-year thing. So I mean, he'll be around for at least the next year, maybe 2. Pretty solidly.
Yeah, especially considering the health of Van Der Esch too, right? Like he's not the reliable one of the group, and Jaylon will be
reliable. Hasn't been paid. Yeah, I mean, Jaylon Smith, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, seems like he could be the leader of that defense. So, all right, moving on to our next guy on the list. We had Bobby Wagner coming at number 8. His 9th season in the league with the Seattle Seahawks, played 16 games, 298 points, IDP 123 scoring, had 19 total impact plays, 5th straight season with 130 plus tackles, only his 3rd season out of the 9 seasons with double-digit tackles for loss. Interesting little tidbit. 2020 was the first time since 2015 he was not selected as a first-team All-Pro. And the question, there's nothing to say about Bobby Wagner except what do I do with him if he's on my dynasty roster? Buy, sell, hold Bobby Wagner. What's the thought on the 31-year-old going into this next season who just finished up another top 10 performance?
Yeah, he's so good. I mean, and he's like, if you want to talk about like our grading and stuff, like he's consistently like one of the top graded linebackers every single year. Like the guy just doesn't give up. Like he's so good at everything across the board. So, but yeah, as far as like buy, sell, hold, I mean,
what's the play? Dynasty owners, what's the play? That's what you really want to know is what are you doing with him and where are you drafting him? And if you have him, what are you doing with him? Is he a buy, sell, hold?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're drafting him in redraft, you're probably drafting him pretty high. Just because, again, he's another one of those peace of mind guys. And
let's talk dynasty. Let's talk dynasty right now. I'm doing a startup. Where do I take what linebacker X to X? Where do you think is reasonable for Bobby Wagner? And he could retire this summer too. I mean, there's so many variables involved. So so I defer to your expertise. I have nothing to say.
That's tough. But for dynasty startup, I would probably I got to run through like names in my head now, basically what would take over him. But I mean, I still think he's probably in the later part of the top 10.
What, like 8? Would you take all the guys we just mentioned? Okay, Okay, let's just read them off. Devin White, you're going to take. Roquan Smith, you'd take. Would you take Zach Cunningham or Bobby Wagner?
I think I take Wagner.
Really? Okay, so what about Blake Martinez or Wagner?
I think. Oh God,
Dynasty, man, you got to take Martinez. You got to.
I know. I guess he's a bit younger, right? But
I'm not going to judge you here for saying something that's not Bobby Wagner. It's okay.
Yeah. You know what I would do? I'd probably draft Wagner and then try and build a championship team I mean, not that you can't do that with Martinez, but I think your selling price for Wagner can be higher than what it is for Martinez, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially if you have a that's always one of those league specific things, the ecosystem of your league. There's always a Seahawks fan in every league. There's always a Cowboys fan in every league. There's a Patriots fan. So I mean, if you have that guy and you have a good working relationship with that guy, that that could definitely give him the edge. I definitely could see that going that way.
Plus name value, right? Like people know Bobby Wagner. Like they've seen him in the playoffs. They've seen him everywhere. Like they know what he does. So I'm probably not buying him as far as buy, sell, hold, but I'm either selling him or holding him for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to be buying him probably via trade, but I have a feeling in dynasty startups this year he will drop a little bit, and like if he can be had as like linebacker 10 to 15, I'm probably going to already have a linebacker at that point. So if I can get Bobby Wagner as my linebacker 2, in that 10, 11 area, if that were to happen, maybe even 9, just depending on how my team build's going, I could, like you said, as a win now piece, as a linebacker 2, or if I push linebacker, which I said earlier, I don't like to do, but if I did push it and got him late, that's kind of where I'm at with him in dynasty. He's definitely not a top 5 linebacker off the board for me. Probably not even top 8, but, probably in that, top 15 area, I'm still comfortable taking him. And if I have him on a team, I'm not selling him. I'm just holding. Ride him into the sunset. I mean, maybe it could be this situation. You could retire this summer, or you could get 3 more 130 tackle seasons out of him. We don't know. So at this point, it's like, do you want to play the game, or do you just want to, hold the asset that is probably most valuable in your starting roster week in and week out versus trying to finagle a situation where you have another Bobby Wagner type player for 5 or 6 years? Just take the take the money, so they say. So that's kind of my thought on Bobby Wagner. I don't have many dynasty leagues, luckily. Not I won't say luckily, but just that's happenstance. It's the way it is, so it's not a real problem for me. So he's currently Nerds linebacker 11, which I think is kind of a fair spot for him as far as the ranking goes. Moving right along, we'll jump into Darius Leonard, the man, the mystery, the legend, who can't play 16 games in a season. Darius Leonard played 14 games this year, 3rd season in the NFL, had 22 impact plays, did turn in a career low in sacks, which I mean, he's an off-ball linebacker, so like being like, oh, it's career low in sacks, I mean, like that's just like a talking point. That's awesome. I'm very happy with that. But previously he did have I believe it was 5 and 7 before, so I mean, that just it's a notable thing. Currently ranked on Dynasty Nerds, our linebacker 1, finished as the linebacker 9 on the season. 0 interceptions this year after being a 5 interception guy the year before. Obviously, interceptions, I mean, not something you can actually project, especially for like a linebacker. But, he had 5 the year before. So, I mean, I guess that's law of averages kind of coming back to earth. But, what are your thoughts on Darius Leonard, the linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts? The generally, I don't know. I mean, we're having this conversation now. Consensus linebacker 1? Question mark again, like what are your thoughts? I mean, do you have rankings that you kind of like have set up right now? And if so, is he your number 1 linebacker, or maybe like is he your number 1 IDP overall? Or what are your thoughts on Darius Leonard?
Yeah, I still probably have him pretty high. I haven't put out rankings just yet, but I mean, I can't imagine putting him outside of the top 3 linebackers for sure. I might put him as LB1. But when it's all said and done, just like I know he's missed some time and stuff, but man, points per game, like everything he does, he's kind of another one of those guys that like he fills the stat sheet in like a number of different ways, right? So and he didn't have the interceptions this year, but again, like you said, it's not really a stable metric. The sacks, I think again, they're lower, but I mean, again, not a staple thing to kind of have to rely on for an off-ball linebacker, especially if he is missing time and stuff like that. So you always assume health when you're putting these rankings together. And I mean, any of these guys really can finish as LB1, whether it's Blake Martinez or Devin White or Darius Leonard. So you're really just kind of going and looking at their floor. And I mean, he doesn't really have a floor below a top three, right? So,
yeah. I mean, like he's basically puts up on a per game basis the tackle floor, that Zach Cunningham offers you similarly. And he does and he has the impact play totals. I mean, 22, that's a good number, and he got that in 14 games. So he is definitely still, he's top dog still right now. I'm pretty in Nerds Dynasty rankings number 1. I have TJ Watt as my number 1 linebacker. That's only because he's my number 1 overall IDP player. I wish we would put him into our DL rankings, but that's a whole nother situation. But honestly, I think, TJ Watt's probably the most valuable IDP asset just because you know what you're going to get with him, and he's got that monster game upside. And if you can play him in a DL spot, I mean, he's the Travis Kelce of the defensive line. He's just different. The points per game difference on him is, I think, almost 4 compared to Myles Garrett this year, which is, like I said, we opened up the show saying, defensive line is such an uncertain position. And that is reflected in, kind of their lower overall scoring too. They just don't have as safe a floor. TJ Watt offers you a floor, and the upside that, in that DL spot. So let's keep plugging right along here. Who do we got next coming in? Oh, yeah. Number 10, Deion Jones, Atlanta Falcons, 5th season, 16 games played. Kudos to him. Back-to-back 16-game seasons. If anybody knows his story, he has had some injury issues in the past. 284 points on IDP 1-2-3 scoring. 25 impact plays. That's kind of how he made his hay this year. He was a big impact player. Career high pass rushing attempts. He had career high in sacks. He had 4.5 sacks this year, 10 quarterback hits. Interesting little tidbit about Mr. Deion Jones is he has 5 defensive touchdowns in his career, and he's played 5 seasons in the NFL. So he averages a touchdown a year. So next year when you are making your projections, make sure you pencil him in for, 0.9 or whatever it may be. And it's his 3rd straight, but this is the thing. It's his 3rd straight season with fewer than 8 pass deflections, which, he started his career out with a pretty high number, 11 and 10. 8's still good. But that, that was something we counted on a little bit more early in his career. 3rd season playing 15 or more games, but logging less than 115 combined tackles. So he doesn't offer the same kind of floor that some of the other players offer at the position, but he did come through this year with the impact plays. John, what are your thoughts on my man Deion Jones?
Yeah, so Deion Jones, he's another one of those guys that's just like a really good linebacker, right? So you know that he's going to be on the field because his team trusts him, and he's a good coverage linebacker. Like you see it kind of with his pass breakup numbers, his interception numbers, things like that. He's able to kind of stick with tight ends and running backs and make plays on the ball. The pass rush numbers are crazy this year. So we kind of mentioned it earlier, but he almost doubled his pass rush like career high. It went from 45 to 85 this year, which is a pretty insane jump. And that I always say, like, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Some people don't like off-ball linebackers that rush the passer because it might take them away from, making a play in coverage or something like that. And I mean, I understand it for sure, but I like it as a way to raise their floor, right? And give them a little bit more upside because you can get. And especially if you're scoring quarterback hits, like quarterback hits are a nice little, like, just bonus points, right? And they're tacked on to sacks too. So, I mean, just take those. I like those kinds of guys. Deion Jones is one of my favorite for sure.
Yeah, like you said, those are high leverage pass rushing snaps or high leverage snaps. They're behind the line of scrimmage. Impact plays in IDP 1-2-3. Sacks are a 6-point play, and tackles for loss end up being a net 4-point play. Those are essentially the 2 most valuable plays that aren't turnovers in real football, essentially. I mean, they moved the line of scrimmage backwards, and in IDP 1-2-3, they are awarded appropriately, I feel like, too. So Deion Jones rushing the passer, like you said, some people want him in coverage, but that doesn't make any sense to me because you want high leverage behind the line of scrimmage snaps. You want to make high leverage, big impact plays. And that's what Deion Jones did, 25 impact plays. I mean, he had a paltry 108 tackles, but here he is in the top 10. And that's on the back of the high leverage snaps that he played with Dan Quinn this year. And that's why, I mentioned earlier, I'm excited about what's going to be happening with Jaylon Smith, assuming another full 16 seasons. I think we could get a career impact play season out of him, which could be good, with his 120 tackle floor. You're telling me you're going to get Deion Jones. Plus, we could look at a really big season from Jaylon Smith coming up. So Deion Jones as well. He had 10 quarterback hits. Just briefly want to mention that. He's had 6 his whole career before that. So that shows you, just how much more he was utilized in that fashion this season previously in his entire career. So
yeah, you gotta love those pass rush attempts. And that's the thing with them too, right? It's not like they're doing it on every single play. Like there's still plenty of snaps that somebody like Deion Jones is getting while they're in coverage. It's just, if he's doing it 85 out of whatever it is, 900 to 1,000 snaps, it's really not, going to take him away from too many tackles, but instead it's going to help him get those sack numbers. So,
amen, brother. Give me a sack all day.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's move this on quickly. We got 2 more guys to finish, then we'll be through with your linebacker ones from 2020. Like we said, we're telling you all the truth. This is real talk. We're going over what they did, how they did it, how we got here, and kind of prognosticating going forward. Here into the list is where we get to the guys which were the biggest surprises. That is Eric Wilson from the Minnesota Vikings in his 4th season. He played 16 games. I think he only started 15. He came in relief of Anthony Barr and had an incredible season, 280 points in IDP 1-2-3 scoring. He, like Deion Jones, also had 25 cumulative impact plays. Waiver wire pickup of the season, in my opinion. I know some people may say Alex Singleton or Cameron Curl, but the fact that you picked up Eric Wilson week 2 or week 3, and you got a linebacker 1 through the whole season, that's big. A top 12 guy off the waiver wire, and he was on your team all season. Top-notch stuff right there. Like I said, high-level impact player. 8 pass deflections this year, 3 interceptions. Had 0 pass deflections previously in his career, even though he had started 10 games before this year. He had no pass deflections, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he's previously appeared in 32 games as a linebacker, but didn't really get a start until this year. What are your thoughts on Eric Wilson, John?
Yeah, so Eric Wilson kind of popped on the radar last year a little bit, right? Kind of filling in for injuries in the Vikings linebacker core. And that kind of, for me, what I saw him kind of do, the numbers that he could put up as an IDP linebacker while he was a starter kind of made me stash him in a few leagues just based on how I know Minnesota likes to use their linebackers. They like to have 2 guys out there. And he's different than Anthony Barr, right? Anthony Barr, they like to use more as a pass rusher. Anthony Barr's not as much of a tackler as Eric Wilson. So what I was doing was kind of stashing Eric Wilson in a lot of dynasty leagues and stuff, just at the chance that somebody might get hurt. And it happened to be Anthony Barr this year. It worked out in a few different leagues, but he's been good. It helped that Kendricks missed some time as well. So he kind of jumped to LB1 in Minnesota for a few games as well. But
they were neck and neck all season. They were kind of going back and forth on who was ahead. Kendricks, speaking of which, he would be in this list, everyone. Do not sleep on Eric Kendricks. If he had stayed healthy, he would 100% be in this list. I think he was scoring more points per game on the season than Darius Leonard was. So he was a total beast. He still finished pretty high. So shout out Eric Kendricks there. But obviously we're talking about Eric Wilson. They did their hay a little bit differently. But like you said, the behind the line of scrimmage plays, the pass rushing plays. He had 9 quarterback hits here. He had 3.5 sacks. It looks like, or 3 sacks. It looks like. And you can compare that to some other guys higher than him. Blake Martinez only got 6 quarterback hits. Jaylon Smith only 4. So again, playing some of those high leverage snaps we were just talking about. You said you've been stashing him and all that. It's his 4th year, first year as a starter. Is Eric Kendricks a name we need to be thinking about in terms of maybe seeing him here again?
It's possible, right? Like I think Anthony Barr, he'll be back next year, which obviously kind of dampens Wilson's value a little bit. But I mean, Minnesota does use three linebackers a little bit, and that's why you see like Wilson's snap numbers in the first 2 weeks, like he was out there, he was playing. And I think like after Anthony Barr went down, I think it was Troy Dye got a chance to play a little bit, and then they bumped Todd Davis in, whatever. But yeah, so he could still provide some value in like really deep leagues, I think. But I think for the most part, they're probably still going to roll with Anthony Barr, unfortunately. But I mean, one of those guys gets hurt again, then Wilson, bang, right away. You know who you're getting off the waiver wire, and you know what you're getting out of them. So there's still value to be had, I think. And I like the idea of stashing certain guys that you know. Like even maybe it's Tyrell Adams next year or something, right? Like if you can stash a guy like that, and McKinney or Zach Cunningham gets hurt again, then you pop these guys into your lineup. Same thing with Eric Wilson.
Nice. Yeah, love me some Eric Wilson. I have him in a couple of IDP dynasties, and it's a very nice feeling. And so do I have our last player here, our last linebacker one of 2020. Foyesade Oloukun, third season with the Atlanta Falcons, slid into that Devondre Campbell role next to Deion Jones this year. 15 games played, although it was really more like 14 because he got knocked out of one of the early games after like 20 snaps. But 15 games played, 274 points, IDP 123 scoring. 18 impact plays, not anywhere near the impact player Deion Jones was, but he had 117 total tackles, 78 of those being solo, 117 total, 17 being solo. Obviously, both career numbers because he had never been a full-time starter before. Nerd's linebacker 25 right now on Sleeper. He does have a dual eligibility for defensive back and linebacker, which is always nice to have on your team. What are your thoughts on Oloukun? How did he do this year? And do you think he's going to be a player that kind of sticks around on this Atlanta team and is a piece of, whatever they decide to do with Atlanta here this going for this next year? And how is his play? Like, does he deserve to be on the field or what are we looking at here?
Yeah, he's not bad. He kind of grades out in like an average territory from what I remember. Just working off the top of my head, I was kind of looking at it earlier, and he's not a bad player. He does a lot of things well. And like you said, he steps into the Devondre Campbell role. So we saw Campbell get 100 plus tackles in this system, and Oloukun stepped right in and did the exact same thing. So I think he's in a good spot in Atlanta to kind of do that. We know that they'll run two linebackers out pretty much every snap. Not every team does that anymore. So he's in a good place to do it. Again, next season, I think he's under contract for sure next season. And after that, he might be a free agent. But at least for next year, we know he should be on the team. And I'd expect similar numbers. I think he's going to be a guy that probably doesn't get drafted in the top 12. But I mean, he's shown already the potential to finish in that area. He probably ends up going, like you said, you guys have him LB 25. That's probably where he ends up going. But he's got that upside because, again, he's another one that can be used as a pass rusher and make it.
He rushed the passer quite a bit as well. I was looking, he and Deion Jones kind of went after it about the same amount.
Yeah.
Deion Jones got home with quite a few more tackles for a loss.
Right.
Which obviously helped boost his score, but Oloukun had 9 quarterback hits as well, so those are always nice.
Yes. Yeah, and the only two teammates on this list too. So it shows that like you can kind of have value if you're drafting guys from the same team, right? You don't have to worry necessarily like, oh, Deion Jones is so good. Will this guy even make any points? Or Bobby Wagner's so good. Will the next guy make points, right? KJ Wright, whatever. He didn't have as good of a year, but yeah, I mean, it shows that there can be value in an LB2 on a team too, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Browns are a good example of that. Kirksey and Schobert were both very viable there for a season or 2 or 3. Then you had Leighton Vander Esch and Jaylon Smith a couple of years ago. Like you said, it was Oloukun and Deion Jones. And honestly, Kendricks and Eric Wilson too. Kendricks just missed it, like I said, because of the injury, but on a points per game basis, he was a linebacker 1. He was a top 6 linebacker most of the season. So yeah, there's no reason. That's a narrative to an IDP that I kind of frustrates me when people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, so and so is not going to be good because so other player X on that team is also good." Blake Martinez is going to take all the tackles from Jabril Peppers. I mean, if things are less binary than tackles, ladies and gentlemen, that's a very reductive way of playing IDP, in my opinion. Just saying, oh, this player's going to steal this from that, or oh, this pass rusher's here, so this guy's going to get less sacks. That based on what? Just how you feel right now, what you heard some other guy say. So I don't, a good, give me the talent. Give me a good player who gets behind the line of scrimmage, who stays healthy over, just some guy, just a jag, a streaming linebacker. Tyrell Adams, hats off to what you did for people this year. Singleton, hats off, had some big games there, but give me a tried and true impact player.
For sure.
Jon, appreciate you coming on with us. Any thing you want to plug? Any topics you want to cover real quick? Any just chit chat you want to have before we tell the IDP Army bid them adieu, or what's up with you?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. That was really cool. Nice talk. And it's always nice to kind of recap the season, look back at the guys that helped us win our fantasy championships, hopefully, or at least performed well. And so basically right now I'm just doing a weekly article for pff.com. I'll plug those usually on my Twitter every week at PFF_Macri. And it's mostly going to be all dynasty related this off season, which is the first time I've gotten a chance to kind of actually write about dynasty. So as we get closer to the draft, there will be some more stuff on incoming rookies and things like that. So I'm excited.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Awesome. Well, man, we really appreciate you coming on the IDP Army. I'm sure we'll get some good information on this. I'm going to get you out of here real quick, and then I'm going to shut down the show, and I'll talk to you for a second afterwards. But I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure and a good time. So until next time. So IDP Army, that's it for me, Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk. Follow me on Twitter. Make sure you guys follow the Instagram at IDP Army, the Twitter at IDP Army. We are dropping some fire over there. Check out my most recent articles on dynastynerds.com. Go check out their YouTube channel, go check out the merch store. We got awesome stuff over there. And I'll be back next week talking the defensive backs, talking real talk defensive backs. And the week after that, we'll be having real talk. We'll talk the defensive line players of 2020. And then we'll start looking forward. We'll start getting ready for 2021. We'll start talking some trades and all that good stuff. So thanks for hanging with me. Subscribe to the show. Leave a review. Appreciate you all. And that's all for me. I'm out.